So we have Shiver by Jónsi. It is 11 songs, 52 minutes long. Jónsi is the frontman of Sigur Rós, one of my favorite bands. He's done like a bunch of projects throughout the past couple of years, doing a bunch of different soundscape things, different things with different artists, movie stuff. But his last proper album was in 2010, which was Go. And that was I really enjoyed Go when it came out in 2010. I still listen to it quite often. It's, really happy, upbeat, like ethereal. That was kind of the style of Sigur Rós for a while. And then when Sigur Rós did their last album, which was 2013, it was more dark. It was more experimental. And even some of their other work has been more dark and whatnot going into that. And Shiver's definitely going into that latter realm of just experimenting with so many different sounds. It is the polar complete opposite of Go, which is crazy because I was like, okay, let's see. I know he's done a lot of different things, but when I listen to singles, I'm like, whoa, okay, I didn't know he's gonna go straight up like Sophie and just go mental with some electronics and see what happens. And
Yeah,
it's different for sure.
we're really kind of leaning into, especially with a number of the songs, like the newly crowned genre hyperpop or like industrial pop, where you're just like,
Yeah, I call it glitch pop. It's like
Yeah.
I want to call it like Audioface first. It's a new like this genre I call is glitch pop because that's the best way to explain it to somebody, because I remember I was trying to explain this to my woman yesterday. I'm like, it's glitch pop, I guess is the best way to say it, because like there'll be electronic sounds that literally abrupt stopped, or there'll be like the Sophie style electronic, which is like
Very loud.
really loud and obnoxious and like in your ears, but it's like industrial at the same time and still abruptly halt stops. Vocals do the same thing, and it's very different. First song, Exhale, starts very slow and builds to like the later half of the song. It's like it gets into industrial pop, and then it's beautiful track. I think it's a really good opener for it. His voice, amazing. That was the one single that we did review earlier in the year, and I think it's a perfect opener to get you into the album because there's a lot of experimentation throughout it naturally, and there's a lot of stuff in there where not too many people are going to enjoy it, but for someone who's looking into it, Exhale's a perfect song into it, and you really get to hear his voice, the different layers that go into it. Great opening track. I do enjoy it. After that, you have Shiver, title track, which is actually if you listen to Go before, there's a couple tracks that actually sound similar to this, but in a very different regard. So it's almost like an upbeat industrial, which is really hard to do. And I haven't heard someone actually produce something like that before, where it's an upbeat version of it, or I should say upbeat, a happy beat version of it, because usually it's more like really dark and demented, but this one was like happy, kind of on the nose of it, but definitely the production in the middle, it's like crunchy electronica and stuff, and it's good. It's interesting to hear that because I'm like, wow, okay, I haven't really heard someone do too much into that with it. So first two tracks are definitely gets you into it. I enjoy it. Cannonball with Elizabeth Fraser is trippy as fuck. That's definitely when now it's getting into the experimental range of the album. It's like literally talking about somebody being a cannibal, or like going into it like it's okay. It's like going into your own depths of your own brain and own mind into it as well. Elizabeth Fraser's part's gorgeous. One thing that's definitely a thing with most of the tracks into it is they start out, a couple of them start out quick, but most of them start out slow, and it takes a while for it to build, and then it builds towards the end, like the last minute of the song gets more faster paced, faster and faster, and goes into it. There is some deviation into it, but the first half of the album, you can definitely hear that.
Yeah. Directly after that with Wild Eye, especially, I think, is when you get hyper pop.
I was gonna ask you, how would you think of Wild Eye?
I like the execution of it because like it's the overall like idea of glitch pop, hyper pop, whatever you want to call it, is that pop is this very like happy, cheery, almost to a fault thing. Not always happy, cheery, because Blackpink, a lot of that album was about, that we reviewed earlier, the K-pop album was about love and losing it, and loss especially, and kind of those emotions.
And all that,
And so you can definitely have dark pop, Billie Eilish example, but generally pop is very happy, hypey, whatever. And then there are a lot of different angles and ways you go about that. Like there's dark pop, like we said with Billie Eilish, but the musical way of expressing sort of like hatred or wanting to go directly against that is almost hyperpop and glitch pop, where you're taking the song construction itself and taking all the happy moments out and glitching them, making it seem like it's almost as though like you're seeing static, but the sounds are like the clanging noises, the industrial random stuff, and so that kind of acts as the background the percussion mostly of the album. And so it's gonna drive you crazy if you're not used to it.
Yeah, it's like Sophie. It's like Sophie, exactly.
Yeah, if you're me, you're gonna fucking dig it.
That's what I was wondering. I'm like, I think this is gonna get. I think Dan's gonna really enjoy this album,
Yes.
and I like the second half of Wild Eye. Then goes into a house beat, which is really random.
Yeah.
and then it just like stops and then goes slow back into it, which is like, wow, holy shit, that's a lot in that one song.
Yeah, I do like that it goes. Usually, like glitch pop stays within pop construction.
Yeah.
I like that this then went into a slower house beat and then came back out into the larger percussive kind of like crescendo
Yes.
of the project. And then that's kind of sets the tone for everything. You get like a little bit of industrial notes here and there and the glitch pop aspects. But a lot of it is really, that stuff kind of acts as the crust, if you will, the side parts to the rest of the album, which is a lot of good but dark instrumentation. I don't want to skip too far ahead, but like I have examples of that later.
Well, you have two songs that come out of that, which are in Icelandic. Jónsi is from Iceland. His actual name is Jón Par Bergtsson, but it's short for, I guess Jónsi is literally a nickname that they do for his first name.
Jónsi, Shorzy.
Right. So the song, I'm going to butcher it, but Sumer sem aldrei kom. That's if
Right
anyone's
after Wild
if
Eye.
anyone is Icelandic, let me know how I pronounce that, because I know the D with a cross is like a DT sound, because my favorite song pop that I get is that. But anyways, that's when it slows down and you really get to hear his voice, and it's like, shit, it's beautiful. And I think it's great that it slowed down in that middle part, because the first 4 songs, like especially Wild Eyes, like holy crap, that's a lot to ingest in your ears and what's to process. And then it slows down for these two in Icelandic that it's just okay, it's beautiful, and you don't even know, you need to know what he's saying to understand like the depths of that song. Then it's starting to get more dark, a little bit kind of like the last Sigur album that came out, some other project they've done. Chorale's more the same. They're both about like 6-minute tracks. Chorale's maybe a little bit happier because of the chimes and stuff up in the middle. There's little like beat boops, I like to call them. So that's almost sounds like a little bit like a throwback to Go, but just a lot slower. And then you get to Salt Licorice with Robin, which is a very interesting track, which then it gets more into that glitch pop stuff, but it's like hype. Now it's like super hyper pop with Robin. And it's interesting because she's an artist that, I mean, she's fantastic, very good, but some of her work I don't necessarily enjoy too much because it's not the genres that I typically like. And this song is like, I don't know if I like it or I don't like it. I still am trying to figure it out because there's so much to go into that. So it's just like something I never thought I would ever hear Jónsi do, is the thing. It's just like so broad and so different.
Yeah, I mean, the thing, I'm not a fan of Robin. I listen to her music a little bit, and I'll say she's always done like really good, interesting collaborations that I think are with like artists I would approve of. There's Chanel Trace that's on here. I know she did a Soul Wax song really recently, like a Soul Wax remix
Remix,
song.
yeah.
That's great. So you're in like the right musical realm for me. But yeah, this was really, again, that take on hyper pop that is more pop than hyper. You're more like engaging and leaning into the poppy aspects and adding this extra flair of glitchiness around it, as opposed to like either that like classic Apple commercial where you're like throwing a hammer at the screen. That's what I consider most of like hyper pop to be. Like,
Yeah.
you're throwing the hammer at the screen of pop to destroy it, and it becomes this like crazy clashing thing where you're like, you're fully deconstructing it. But rather than fully deconstructing it, this is using the deconstructed bits to build a new happy song around.
Yeah, and it's
which is a nice spin. I think it's executed really well.
I haven't heard it. I haven't heard anyone really do it this way, and this is because I don't really like Sophie's music at all. I don't like hyper pop at all. But this is something that I haven't heard before. The only thing is close is Yeah Right from Vince Staples, because that's a song that like it does that style of deconstruction and everything, and it builds it up with Kendrick and Vince Staples on it, and it's interesting to hear that. So after Salt Licorice, you have Hold, which is more like a decent track. You have Swill, which is another single that was released that I do enjoy. That's more of like kind of your industrial pop, not necessarily hyper pop. And the last two boys, Grenade. Grenade is a really slow, gorgeous track. It kind of builds towards the end. And then Beautiful Boy is a really good song too. It's interesting because he's had like a lot of like relationship problems with him and his partner. I can't think of his name right now. Something Summers. He's a American music maker and stuff, and they've been together for, I don't know, 15 plus years or so. So It's interesting to hear stuff because he's like always about being open and proud of like of who he is, and he's done that his entire career. So I think it's a gorgeous closing track that like lands the album perfectly into it, and it's a very, very good album. It's a lot of sounds I did not expect to hear from Jónsi, really. I know like there's some projects and stuff before that I've heard kind of like the glitchiness in his music, but I thought those are just side projects because there was work with a lot of different artists.
Yeah.
And he said, which is very interesting, he started working on this album almost like 6 months after he released Go. So in 2010, he started working on this album, and he said that he was already experimenting with it, and he originally wanted to do it all by himself, but he got along with some other producers and other makers, and he tagged him in an Instagram post to actually help him do all the sounds, because he said he had ideas of doing this almost a decade earlier. So he's way ahead of people in that regard, because, you know, EDM didn't really explode until 2013, 2014, and at least in this country. So
yeah,
it's crazy to see it.
With that kind of like long time span, it's difficult to tell like what parts were created when.
Yeah,
but like
naturally.
that does go to say still that his brain is sort of on like the higher level of music as it's projecting, and the fact that he was able to kind of picture this out going forward is like what music might end up looking like.
Exactly.
And then you get groups like 100 gecs who are completely removed away from Jónsi and Sigur Rós entirely, who are coming up in an era with a sound and coming out with a sound that I think some of the more poppy things from 100 gecs are that kind of gleeful type of hyper pop that's similar to what's in the Jónsi album that we just reviewed. So I think to be able to have at least even a tiny small amount of foresight to say, no, some of the music I'm making right now can still be made relevant 10 years from now, even though none of us really know what that sound is.
Yeah.
Good mark.
It's crazy. Yeah. It's a fantastic album. I'm really happy with it because it even broadened my horizons on a genre that I don't like necessarily, but now it's showing what you can do within it. So it's, the world is ending, but at least the music's good. So it's Audioface.
Audioface 101.
So this is...
Who will be the dancing Ghanaian pallbearers? How many of those will be...
I'm going to say... Shit. 10 pallbearers? 8 and 9 pallbearers, maybe?
Pallbearers.
I'm going to go on a solid 9 pallbearers. So you got 3 on 2 sides, 2 on the front, and then 1 breakdancing on top.
It's fucking Trump's coffin or what?
Yeah,
Shit's massive. Gonna have to put the bitch on a forklift.